the end of the day, selling is transferring a feeling. If you don't have the feeling, you can't transfer it. If you don't have a good, positive feeling, dude, you're an actor. You have to sell and run your business from a place of positivity. And however you get there, God bless you. Welcome to the Primeau Show. It is episode 110, or is it 111? I've lost track. Unbelievable. The special sauce for sales success. We're with Cris Cruz today, and I cannot wait to get into it with him. This guy is rarefied air. You want to talk about a sales professional. You want to talk about somebody who's super successful and does great things for a lot of people. This is our guy. So let me just pay the bills real quick, guys. If you haven't read my book, Sell a Million, what are you waiting for? 101 tips for furniture and mattress store owners to sell another $1 million or more this year. Truth be told, take the word furniture or mattress out of there. It's just a great marketing book. And yes, I cannot help but bleed sales because that's been my entire career since 1982. And before that, starting in 1960 as a young baby, I was in sales, selling my mom to go get my milk and change my diaper, right? So anyway, let me say a special thank you to Steve Hauk and all of those at the Mattress Industry Network Group that do such a great job sponsoring my show. And for the entire industry, if you are in this industry in any way, shape, or form, you're a retailer, you're a wholesaler, you're a manufacturer, you're a sales pro on a retail floor, join this group. The Mattress Industry Network Group wants you to be part of their community. I don't even know how many we have now. I think it's over 1,800 folks. And join the group. It's absolutely free. Make comments, ask questions. This is a great group, great human beings in this group that want to help you succeed. If you want to learn how to build your business, how to market, how to merchandise, what lines are the best lines, what financing is the best finance, and all of those answers, they're inside the Mattress Industry Network Group. So join the group today and tell them Pete sent you. So with that, Crispin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete. Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on today. Listen, we got one recommendation. We got to change the name of the show. It should be Prime. See, we dropped the AU from your last name, and it should be Prime Time with Pete, baby. Prime Time with Pete. That's what it should be. I'm
going to write that down. Do I have to pay for that, or is
no? Drop the AU, and it's Prime Time with Pete every single time you're on. That's it, baby. That is it.
I like that. All right.
I like it.
So anyway, you can't help but give some free consulting wherever you go. It's
whether you want it or not. Yeah, that's right. Whether you want it or not.
So Crispin, we have 3 distinct different audiences, and I want to give red meat to every one of them. We have sales pros that work the retail floor, that sell things to people belly to belly every day. And we have sales we have sales reps who sell to furniture and mattress stores. And my primary goal was to reach my store owners, but I think I've got more sales reps in here than I have store owners. So it's just one of those crazy things.
That's good.
Kyle and Guy Danes in South Africa, thank you for joining us. Always great to have you with us. So let's get started. You have been in sales a long time, and you have seen great salespeople, and you've seen not so great salespeople.
That's right.
So, and one of the fascinating things about your practice to me is you consult with big and small companies both. I have a sneaking suspicion you see some of the same mistakes being made by big and small companies with their salespeople. And I'm just curious, what are those?
Yeah. So you hit it on the head. So thank you so much for clarifying your audience too, because that really helps to kind of direct maybe where we're going to go today. And, Pete, I got to tell you, I mean, there's a couple basic foundational things that we always look for when we're trying to help individuals, perform at a higher level. And I hate to talk about, these foundational concepts that just seem, they seem so basic. Like, you mean you're not doing that, right? And so, and especially when you're engaging and trying to have a higher level of engagement with those, prospects. And we're going to talk a little bit later, and if you give me time to do that, about the definition of prospect and how we should be thinking about that, right? But at the end of the day, you want to be better at sales, then you need to actively listen and you need to ask good questions, right? Ask good questions and actively listen. And whether you're doing that on the floor, on the sales floor, whether you're engaging with a potential, large opportunity that you're selling, to a blue chip client, a corporate package, or whatever that might look like in your world, actively listen and ask good questions. And then when you're asking questions, you gather that information on whether or not that prospect has a compelling reason to buy your product or service now or in the very near future. Because Pete, let me ask you, if they're not if they're not willing to buy your product now or in the very near future, then is it a prospect or is it a suspect?
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
And
100%. I want to just unpack a little bit of what you said for our listeners. So actively listening, ladies and gentlemen, is not listening. Hurry up and finish what you say so I can spiel out my company's propaganda. That's not active listening. Active listening is, tell me more. Oh, can you explain that to me? Get them to color, be comfortable with those empty spots in the conversation. Let them fill those in. And asking good questions are questions that they care about, not that you care about. It's all about them. And if it's all about them, whether you're selling B2B or you're selling to a consumer in a store, you're going to have a lot more success, because old Zig Ziglar saying, they don't care about about you until they know that you care, because you are just another salesperson. You come in with a sign on your head that says salesperson, and you have to do everything you can to get that sign off and have another sign put up called caring human being that wants to do the right thing.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You're so good. And I will say one other thing, here, I don't ever want to give relationship advice. If there's one thing that all of the viewers and the listeners should be, take this one, to the bank. Don't ever, ever, ever take relationship advice from Crispin Cruz. Okay. But I'm here to tell you, Pete, don't you, like, if you're having an issue or a challenge with your loved one at home, and you're having maybe a difficult conversation, right? Which sometimes I'll whisper it, which sometimes sounds like an argument, right? So, but if you're having a difficult conversation with your spouse or your significant other, do not use this phrase. All right. But I want, your viewers or your listeners to write this down. All right. If they have this thing called a pen and a piece of paper, you can actually take some notes, right? I know that sounds crazy, but note taking is still a thing. Okay. So I want you to write this down. Do not reply with just the intent of listening, and listening with the intent to reply. Okay. Do not listen with the intent to reply. Listen with the intent of listening. I'll say it one more time. Do not listen with the intent to reply. Listen with the intent of listening. Right. And so what does that sound like in an argument, Pete? Like if you're having a challenge at home and you say to your spouse, you're not listening with the intent of listening. You're only listening with the intent to reply. See, that's not going to go over too well. Right. So if you think about that, think about the way that you're listening and you're absorbing that information from your prospect, right? And I talked a little earlier, Pete, when we talked about, okay, let's change the definition of prospect. The prospect isn't someone that you're going after, that you're trying to sell to on the show floor. The prospect isn't someone that you're calling on, or necessarily, you're going into their office and trying to sell to them. Let's change the definition of that. Like, why aren't we talking about prospects being every single person we engage with every single day? Like, when we use those same skills, Pete, listening with the intent of listening and not listening with the intent to reply, when we use the same skill of, asking good questions to really want to get to know the individual that you're engaging with, to have a higher level of engagement. Like, why don't we do that, Pete? Help me with that. Like, why doesn't that happen?
Oh Lord, you've got so many different things. I'm going to start. First of all, sales pros, listen up. I got your attention. It's your sales business. Everywhere you go, I'm going to tell you guys a true story. I'm going to try to tell it in 5 minutes or less. And it's not a story about selling at retail. It is a story selling at wholesale, but it applies. Everywhere you go, everyone you meet could be a prospect. So I was renting when I was first a Certa rep many, moons ago, like 30 years ago. And I was renting because I was in this territory and I wanted to find out what part of the territory I really wanted to live. I thought I had the right place. Well, we decided that I would spend the July 4th weekend by myself because I had a lot of work to do. And my wife and the kids were driving back home to be with her family, which is great. I had a lot of work to do. My landlord came over and said, "Hey, I noticed the other car's gone and I didn't want you to spend a holiday by yourself. So would you, come on over?" And I said, "Sure, Al, I'll come over." His daughter owned a hardware store. That hardware store wanted to sell mattresses, but didn't know how. I ended up with a new dealer that I did hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars with. Now, had I closed my heart and my mind and not realize what a kindness my landlord was giving me, a blessing beyond, just food and fellowship, right? I actually got a new customer out of this. So you're in the grocery store, wherever you are, it's your sales business. Make friends and influence people. I know it's a book. I'm sorry, I can't help it because that stuff's in me. And just remember, everywhere you go, there could be a prospect. Let me tell you a really funny story. Just happened to me. A fellow sales rep and a fellow store owner in Vegas. We are at the end of our Vegas trip. We're both exhausted. We're not looking at the other. We've known each other for 30 years.
Right.
We're in negotiations with his store to do business. And I don't even notice it's him. He doesn't notice it's me. But what did I do? I held the door for him like I hold the door for anybody. And I let him go out first like I would do for anyone. And he finally looked up at me and he goes, "Pete." And I go, "Paul." He said, "I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you."
I love it.
He goes, "We always tell people you're always supposed to be nice to everybody just to be nice, but it's also good business too, guys and gals."
Right.
So you never know who you're influencing and how, and it works the reverse. So
That's
watch
right.
that. You had something else that was really, really big, and it just reminded me of Mark Hunter, that, selling is a lifestyle. To me, selling is life. I came out kicking and screaming, trying to sell on feed me and let me sleep,
Yep.
right? In 1960, August 12th, feed me and let me sleep. And those were the sales I was trying to make as an infant. And so we're always all selling. And I had something very specific I just wanted to unpack really quickly because it really hit a nerve with me. And you said it so well about your intention and your mindset when you're listening. And one of the best things, and this is a very specific technique, this works at retail especially well, and it works B2B especially well, and it actually works in your marriage relationships extremely well. And believe it or not, it works with teenage children. And so whenever the other person says something, and you're going to make this your own words, but you basically get a very inquisitive look on your face, because if you're not really inquisitive, you should be, and repeat the question back to
That's
make
right.
sure that you understand. Number one, if you're a guy like me, it buys you time because you probably didn't hear the entire question.
Yep.
And second of all, we make sure that whatever we're going to address, we're addressing the right thing, and it gives them some time to add additional color and or feeling. And we both know when we're selling, we're dealing with feelings as much as we are dealing with facts.
That's right.
If it, in B2B, one of the things that we forget about in today's economy, Crispin, it's more important than ever. You need to support your buyers. Your buyer is scared shitless right now.
Oh
Your
yeah.
buyer is scared that he or she is going to lose their job if they make the wrong decision.
That's right.
And whatever successes that there are out there, you need to carefully and artfully present them to help support them. Whatever successes that they've had in the past, and they've had successes, or you wouldn't even want to sell them, get them to relive those successes in their
Mhm.
own words.
Mhm.
Support them so that they're comfortable making a buying decision with you. And sales pros at retail, it's the same for you.
Same thing.
You need to support them. You need to let them know what your guarantees are and why this is a good place to do business. Why should they give their hard-earned cash over to the company you represent? And the biggest reason is you. The
Yeah.
biggest reason is you're a good, honest person who's always going to do the right thing. And
Mhm.
yes, they've been in business 50 years and they're a great company and they're a third generation company. That's all great. But don't ever let it slip away from you guys. So I'm just
It's so
yakking
good.
and yakking, and
It's so good. I tell you,
you're my guest, and I'm like just running with it.
I love it. I love it. So, but this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be talking sales. We're supposed to be saying, okay, how does that apply? How does that apply in a retail?
Right.
From a retail standpoint, how does it apply maybe in a big enterprise opportunity? All the things that you're saying, and I gotta tell you. So two things. One, I like being able to connect the idea with something that's easy for me to remember, because I've said this probably 100 times to 1,000 different people. But listen, Pete, I'm not that smart. Like, I'm not a smart guy. Okay, so and I say that because I need little triggers to help me remember how to use these tools. Right. So one of the tools that you just touched on that we train for Sales Arbiter and through Sales Arbiter is review, repeat, remind. And that's that questioning strategy that you just talked about. Like, you're just like, okay, review with what the prospect has told you, repeat it back to them. And then somewhere down in the sales process, you remind them why that was important to them. Right. And so that's one of those pieces that you just discussed. But then what really resonated with me just minutes ago was how you need to be able to connect to your prospect. So I would encourage those that are listening and watching, like, go and go back and look at this process and this behavioral, process called DISC, DISC. And if you're not familiar with it, go back and research that DISC and see how you can use those tactics, those tools to be able to connect with your prospect at a higher level. And why is that? Well, Pete, I'll take a chapter out of your book, right? We buy from those that we like, that we trust, and that are like us. So DISC gives us the opportunity to identify the behavior type of the individual that we may be selling to, be more like them, change or be chameleon-like to change your core behavior to mirror and match them more closely. That helps to build trust, and it helps them to like you more. So we use DISC as the foundation of everything that we train against, for when we put people through the Sales Arbiter outcome sales training program. That's the foundation of everything that we build off of, Pete. And it's because we're trying to build a high level of engagement with those that we're talking to, that we're trying to identify. What's the compelling reason for you to potentially want to buy our product and service today or in the very near future? Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know, that the stuff that you're talking about there, Pete, it was definitely resonating with me for sure.
Believe it or not, we've got a few people out there that don't know what DISC is. Can you quickly go into it? Just define the 4 types really quickly for us.
Sure.
Not too
Sure.
quickly. Don't rush.
Yeah, that's okay. So the 4 behavior types. So there's the dominant, behavior type, which is the D, the influencer, which is the I, the steady relator or steadiness, which is S, and then the compliant, the compliant person, which is C. Okay. And these are broken up in different colors, which is really great. And, one thing that I'll do for those listeners and those that are watching today, if they reach out to you, Pete, I'll make sure that you get a digital copy of this card right here. If you can see that, it's a card that describes how to identify with a specific style and then how to communicate with a specific style. I'll send you the digital copy of this, and you can send that out to anyone that you want. And once they start using this, card, they may have to do a little craft session, right? Where they cut it out and then they kind of tape it together so they have a card like this. But I would say do a 2-minute drill before you start your day, before you go out on the sales floor, before you engage with your first prospect. Read this front and back. And it's going to help you to start to identify those individuals that you're selling, to. And it's going to give you these, give you the keys on how to communicate to them as well. Okay. So I'll send that to you, Pete, in digital format. And then you share that with whoever you'd like. But hopefully that gives a little foundation to what we're talking about with the DISC strategy today.
That's awesome. And was it what that I keep having the name Brooks is going through my head. Is that where you learned DISC from?
No, so I've been a DISC certified trainer. And then also, so I went through the full training program. And also in, what we've done is we've taken some of the foundational training that we've built from the Sandler, Sandler, Sandler sales method. And we've combined those two to build a sales training program that we coin now as the outcome sales training program for Sales Arbiter.
That's great. Sandler had a lot of good things. Jim, can you pull that comment back up for me? Kyle Danes. Brilliant insights, Pete and Crispin. I am not in sales, but these insights are invaluable for life and building greater skills and business in general. Thank you, Kyle Danes. Kyle, I have news for you. I want you to really get this because I love you like a brother. Yes, you are in sales. Your consultant business, your life coaching business is dependent on your ability to sell. So I want you to make an adjustment right now. I want you to adjust in between your ears. Yes, you are in sales.
No, that's right.
I'm
That's right.
sorry. It's out of love. It's only out of love, brother.
I love
So,
it. I love it, Pete.
um, that review, repeat, remind is great. And anything that's like, Tracy Miller, how are you? I really appreciate you both, you sharing your experiences. Tracy, I am so sorry that we didn't hook up in Vegas. And anybody that is doing a quick listen to this, not hook up that way, hook up professionally.
Thanks
Um,
for putting that out there, Pete.
yeah, I know. I say things and I think that everyone's just as innocent and sweet as me, but they're not. So Tracy, thank you for listening. Appreciate you. Chris Stone, golden nuggets from the Sales Arbiter. Absolutely, Chris. Crispin is on fire here. I don't know where to begin with this next one, but I want to say a quick shout out to Jack Balsley, a friend of mine that owns the mattress sales store in Indian Lake, South Carolina. Thank you for the order you just placed. I guess you did not get my message that I was going to be doing a live show, but I'll take an order anytime, any day. Thank
I
you,
love
sir.
it.
I
I love it.
appreciate you. Crispin has blessed me. It's never happened before on the show. I might have gotten an email, but I didn't actually get a text where I knew I actually had a sale. So one of the things that can become challenging for us as salespeople is we have to be driven to some degree, Crispin.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we have to put the customer's needs first before our needs. And I find that to be a balancing act. I was really blessed. I had great mentors, and you remind me of my late mentor, George Cooley.
Mm.
He taught me a lot about sales, and I could write a whole book on what George taught me and still never scratch the surface of. I mean, I was a kid on my days off. I would literally travel in a car with him as he was making calls as a sales rep. So when I was learning how to sell retail, I was also learning how to be a sales rep at the same time.
Mm.
The problem for me is what was supposed to be 3 or 4 years turned into 9 years because I fell in love with it and I didn't want to get away. And then after about 7 years, I did want to get away. But Crispin, I was such a horrible interview. It took me 2 years of interviews before I got on the road, actually. But the greatest compliment I've ever heard anyone give a salesperson was this. And it was a librarian from Canada. I believe her name was Lee. And she said, I want you to pay attention to what George does and how he makes people feel.
Mm.
I'm in college. I'm like a senior in college. Even as a junior in college, I started working at the store.
Right.
And I'm trying to learn this just in case my NFL career doesn't happen, which of course it didn't.
Right.
So, she says she's a librarian from Canada.
Right.
So she says, I'm not a sales expert, but I've been watching George sell for several days here. And I'm going to tell you that if you learn how to be as gentle with people as he is, you will be very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget that. And, I always say this, I've never said this publicly, but here I go, getting myself in trouble again. I believe that God sends people with messages to us.
Sure.
And I believe, and I call them angels. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I believe in the angels with the wings too, but I also believe that God's puts messages into people's hearts that they share with us and help make us better people. And I kept asking myself, why was that message delivered to me? And I've never forgotten it.
Mm-hmm.
I've forgotten a lot of things in my life, but I've never forgotten that. And this is especially true in retail. For you to build a career, you need people to buy from you again and again, and you need them to love buying from you so much that they refer you to their friends and their family.
Right.
And you need those 5-star online reviews for your stores today. You know, when I started, there was no such thing as a 5-star online review. There was
Right.
barely anything online at all. I didn't become aware of it for a good 10 years after that.
Right.
So today, more than ever, whatever you do and however you do it, remember that whether you make the sale on the first call or it takes several calls to make the sale, you want the people to remember you in a good way. And the way that you do that is by being gentle,
Mm-hmm.
as gentle as you can be. If you're a hard driver, you're a hard driver. I will never tell you to sell inauthentically. You have to sell with your style, but remember to put the customer first. I used to do sales meetings and I used to tell my salespeople, if you and your heart aren't in the right place, you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to make the sale. If it's very close, you're going to miss. You're
That's
going to
right.
miss because everybody has a lie detector
Yep.
and it's not in their brain and it may not even come down to that. It's just the feeling that they have that they're either comfortable with you or they're not comfortable with you.
Yeah.
And if your heart's in the right place, the chances of them being comfortable with you is much, much greater.
So let's talk about that, if you don't mind. I
Yeah.
got it because it's so great, Pete. It- when you talk about being an advocate for the for yourself, for your business, for the organization that you serve, and also for the prospect, right? So two pieces there, which I think are really, really interesting. First of all, your time is valuable and your prospect's time is also valuable. And so the one thing, I own every single one of these gray hairs, Pete. I can tell you that. And it's because I've had a lot of different experiences in my life, right? And the one thing that I cannot manufacture is time, right? So me being, being kind to my prospect is also valuing, having some value for their time, right? And also for my own, because that's something that I will not ever get back. The investment in time that I have in every prospect that I engage with. And remember earlier in the broadcast, we changed the definition of prospect. It's everyone that we engage with all day long, every day. Okay. Inner circle, friends, family, coworkers, and then true prospects that you're potentially trying to sell to. Right. So that time piece is invaluable. And so I don't want to waste it. And I don't want to waste my prospects' time. So I'm actually doing them a favor by not wasting their time, continuously calling them, trying to follow up with them when they have no interest in buying my product or service. No interest, right? And so that's a piece that I'm being, to your point, gentle about. I'm being gentle with. Okay. So that's number one. Secondly, the second piece that I got out of that is you're absolutely right, Pete, because here's the thing. If you make your prospect not okay, you make them uncomfortable, you make them upset, if there's something that you're doing to push them to a sale, right? And if you make them not okay, and you do that once, okay. But you do that twice in the sales event, oof, you do that 3 times in a sales event, then I always ask the question, Pete, what are the odds that they're going to buy from you? If you're making your prospect not okay, the odds that they're going to buy from you go way down, like 0, right? Right. So we're always trying to keep our prospect okay, right? We're trying to do that. And that's really important, is that we're trying to understand what's the compelling reason for you to buy my product or service today. What's the timing? What does that look like? You're asking good questions. You're actively listening. You're doing all those things, then you're being assertive, but not aggressive. You're being assertive, not aggressive. There's a difference. Every single person that's watching or listening to this podcast right now knows the difference. They know the difference. And if you're pushing them to a sale, then it puts too much pressure on you and the prospect, and you're making them not okay. Does that make any sense at all, Pete? I don't know.
100%. So I love how you went from gentle to assertive, but not aggressive, because those are delineating points that are so important that we as salespeople either have great success or we flounder being able to navigate through some of that. So learning to ask better questions, you should constantly hone your craft. And some of the best questions that you're ever going to get, you're going to borrow. Someone's going to do it to you, and you're going to go, that was really good. I'm a salesman, and he did it to me, or she did it to me, and I liked it. You know, Tommy Hopkins always used to say, if your tactics are sound, they can't stop you. And he does a whole story about how his son used his tactics on him at supper to get what he wanted. And it's hilarious. We're not going to get into it, but help us structure better questions really quickly.
Yeah. So how to ask better questions. So one of the things, and I'm going to give also this tool out today, to ask better questions, we need to get out of the habit of having this deep desire to tell our own story. We have to get out of that habit, Pete. I mean, that is critical for us to get out of the habit of having this deep desire to tell our own story. And, you know, for those that are listening and watching, your stuff doesn't matter. All right. I know that might hurt a little bit, but your stuff doesn't matter. Like, what you think is important about your product or your service is not important unless it's important to the prospect. It's only important if it's important to the prospect. All right. So how do we figure that out? We ask questions. What brought you in today? You know, what's the reason why you're here? You know, what issues or challenges are you having? Right. And we start to ask questions. And then what happens? It becomes a bit of a tug of war that we have to manage. We have to manage that in the sales process. We have to be very careful. And again, being assertive, not aggressive, but staying in control of the sales event. Right. And so how do we do that? Well, the way that the prospect tries to take control, Pete, is they start to ask us questions. And if you don't think that prospect has done their homework, come on. We all know if we're going to make a major purchase, if we're going to spend thousands of dollars or even several $100s on an item, I guarantee you that prospect has done their homework. Okay. And so we have to be very cognizant of that. And we know that they might tell us that this is the first time we've ever been in your store. This is the first time we're thinking about buying, X or Y product. Not true. They've looked it up online. They know all the specifications. They have done their homework, because think about it. Pete, the last time that you made a major purchase, did you or did you not do your homework before purchasing that product or service? I guarantee you the answer is yes. So what do? So when a prospect asks us a question, we use this little technique called a reverse. And the reverse is real simple, Pete. It's answering a question with a question. Now, you can only do that maybe once or twice, okay? You can't do that too many times, because then your prospect is going to say, wow, this guy shouldn't have been in sales. He should have been a politician, because he never answers my question, right? He never answers my question. So we got to be very careful with that, okay? So we use that technique maybe once or twice. Now, maybe some of your listeners are saying, well, why would I do that? So you can gather more information so you can answer their question correctly. Because here's what happens, Pete. Your prospect asks you a question and then you hurry to answer. And why? Because we have this deep, compelling reason to answer the question, right? And we might answer correctly, we might answer incorrectly. If we answer incorrectly and we continue to answer the prospect's questions incorrectly, even though we know all the specs, we know how to sell our product, we know the features and benefits, right? And if we do that and we continue to answer our prospect's question incorrectly, then the odds of them buying from us go way down. So what do? We use the reversing technique to ask a question when a question is asked. And so here's the process: softening statement, then a reverse, right? So, hey, Pete, you know what? I'm so glad you asked me that. I hear that all the time. Okay, softening statement. Now, before I answer, Pete, help me understand. There's a reason why you asked me that. Why is that important to you? Now you've got something. Now, why is that important to you? Why did you ask me that question? Right? Softening statement, then a reverse. That's going to give you more information to answer your prospect's question correctly. So then there's more bonding and rapport. So now you have a better connection with the prospect. They know that you're actively listening. All of these things are happening at the same time, Pete. All these things are happening at the same time. So then you can effectively either qualify or disqualify that prospect. Okay. Does that make sense, Pete?
Oh, you can't help yourself. You're so good. I say the same thing. Does that make sense? And you as a sales professional, whether you're B2B or whether you're belly to belly in a store, have to get really comfortable with saying that, just the way Crispin said it to me and just the way I said it back to him. You could tell that we both have asked that question thousands of times. And it's so important for us to differentiate ourselves, to not sound like the swarmy salesperson at the other store or the swarmy sales rep who's just determined to make the sale for his or her reasons and not for your reasons. So to me, answering a question with a question is huge, especially when it gets us to the heart. And the heart is what's important to you. And, there's a lot of other questions that this reminds me of, but this is so artfully done. This is really a formula that you guys should memorize, and you guys should get with uh Crispin, get to his sales site, the Sales Arbiter, and start to get some of this um in your own arsenal if it's not already in there. Something else that you guys can say, if you're a sales rep, you can say in a business to business, now you're selling a store owner, you should let them know that you know what's going on in their environment, for instance, and without betraying any trust. If you know that there's another store coming down the street and it's not trusted information, sharing that with them and asking them what their concerns are and what does success look like for them. You know, one of my favorite questions, if you sell sofas, anybody that sells sofas, because a lot of you mattress salespeople are selling in furniture stores, I always used to ask, is there a TV in the room? Because if there's a TV in the room, that means there's more time in the room, and that means the wearability of the fabric is more important to them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's B2B or it's to a consumer, our goal should always be to do the right thing for them. And because this is what we do every day, we have specialized knowledge that they don't have. And starting to focus in on what's important to them and getting them to give us more information about how a room is going to be used, or what does success look like for them, what are their concerns, how do they see the future, what is their most immediate pressing concern or area of improvement. And
That's it.
you probably already know what they need to improve on. And here's something that I will say to all of my sales professionals. You earn the right to the sale by, number one, being willing to walk away from the sale if it's not the right thing for them.
That's
But
right.
and that's a heart thing and that's a brain thing. But the other piece of it is knowing the answers to these questions before you even ask them, because you've done your homework. Now, when it's with a consumer, you don't know if there's a TV in the room or not, and that's why you have to ask the question.
Right.
Um, you don't know exactly what's important to her, but you have an idea. If she
Mhm.
has children, what's important to her, you have an idea. And so one of the things that the most successful retail salesperson ever said to me, I said, "Hey, listen, I'm writing a blog." This is years ago, and I still have a blog, guys. I'm writing a blog, and I need some success tips. And he just started laughing. And he goes, "No one could ever do what I do." And I go, "Well, tell me what you do." And he said, "I go deeper than any other salesperson dares to know. By the time these people leave, I know the names of their children. I know where they go to school.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if they're interested, they know mine too. And I know that's not in any sales book anywhere." And
Mhm.
I said, "Tom, as long as they asked you, it's okay." Now,
Right.
so
Right.
one of the things that happens in our sales career is we learn about sales and we get pretty good at it. And we have this new body of knowledge and we want to share that body of knowledge with everybody. But here's the truth, and it's hard. It's a hard one to learn and to understand and to calibrate and to control it and to use it with good judgment and with discernment. And that is, if you use everything that you have learned in every sale, you may never make another sale as long as you live. All right.
That's right.
Because you're going rabbit hunting with a machine gun and you don't need to do it. You just
Yep.
need to fill in the pieces that are important to them.
Mm.
So,
It's so good. It's so good.
yeah,
Pete, I gotta say something there because
go.
when you talk about you're going through the discovery phase with your prospect, right? And you're going through and you're trying to identify, okay, what's important to your prospect? And so there's 3 levels that you have to go through. Level 1, the first level. And this is what the prospect tells you. So the prospect is saying to you, "Well, Pete, this is what brought me in today." Or this is the reason why we're having the conversation. Or these are the things that I think we probably need to fix, our challenge, our issue, our frustration, whatever that looks like. Okay. That surface level, that level 1 is typically, not always, but typically that's not the reason why they came in. Okay. So then the next level that we have to use good questioning strategies, because we have to get to level 2, which sounds something like, okay, then now level 2 is we got to figure out how is this personally or impacting either the organization or the family. Okay, if you're selling something direct, right, how is this personally impacting the family unit or the organization or the business? That's level 2. So then you ask good questions to try to understand, how is this personally impacting the organization, the family, whatever that looks like? Okay. Now we get to level 3. That's where things really happen. Okay. When we figure out that we're asking good questions and we find out, now, Pete, how is this personally impacting you, the buyer? How is this personally impacting you? We get down to that level 3. What we call that is true pain. That's the reason why they're there. Okay. If you can ask good questions and get through level 1 and level 2 and get to what we call true pain in the discovery process, now you've got something. Okay. But you got to keep asking questions. And I love what you just said, Pete. The guy you were talking about, he said, I go deeper than anyone else, and I figure out what? I figure out whether they have a compelling reason to buy my product or service now or in the very near future, right? And I'm here to tell you, if they're not willing to buy your product now or in the very near future, it's not a prospect, it's a suspect. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't follow up with them 3 months from now or 6 months from now, or put them on a tickler list or something like that. But they're not a prospect. They're a suspect, Pete. All right. And we have to come to grips with that. And when you look at your pipeline, if they're full of suspects and you have very little prospects, you better clean that thing up, because you've got pipe dream and not pipeline. You've got pipe dream and not pipeline, and you better get it cleaned up. All right. I'm sorry. I get excited.
No, that's so good. So good. So I just want to go a little deeper for my sales pros at retail. When you get the Heisman, the stop sign, just looking when they first come in, that doesn't mean you stop asking good questions and you stop selling. That means, let me tell you what that means, ladies and gentlemen. That person, out of all the other ones, is the most ready to make a buying decision, because we know when somebody gets ready to make a big buying decision, what happens to them. They go borderline insane. Their heart rate elevates, their blood pressure goes up. They say things that are kind of goofy. You just walked into a big furniture store and you're just looking. You're not just looking. You need something. However you handle it, keep the conversation going. That Heisman at the beginning should be music to your ears, because that person, more than any of the others, is probably closest to making a buying decision. And that's why she's pushing away on you so hard. And once you break that down, and I'm going to tell you a funny story in 1 minute or less. My friend who left us a long time ago, Angel Gutierrez, very special guy. Loved him, learned so much from him, and so sad that he left us so early. But a customer came into the store. He said, "Welcome to Kronheim's Furniture." And they gave him the Heisman. And he said, "No problem. I'm going to send them into our Broyhill Gallery. By the time they come out of the Broyhill Gallery, they're going to be fine." They've seen 15 beautiful decorated rooms. Before anybody else was doing this, we were doing it. This is back in the late 80s. And so they come back out, bigger than life. They give him the Heisman again, Crispin. I mean, nobody gives a Heisman after they go through the Broyhill Gallery. They usually melt and they go, "Hey, I had a question about this thing or that thing or the other," because it looks so beautiful. They gave him the Heisman again. And he didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what he was going to do. And I learned something as a retail salesperson. When you don't know what to do, but you understand emotionally what's going on, you improvise. And he crumbled as if he was being hit by their Heisman. He crumbled and acted like he was falling. And he looked up and he goes, "I didn't hurt you yet, did I?" And they just laughed. They just started laughing. And then they said, "Well, there was this one little thing." And I made the mistake of walking away. And before I knew it, 5 or 10 minutes later, he was writing them up. And so never forget that your customer can be a little bit crazy when they are in the process of making a big buying decision. Stu, how are you? Stu has a question. "Pete, you hit this spot on. I bought my most recent vehicle. I did so much digging and looking. It made my head spin. I found one that was reasonable and I went straight to buy it. Enough looking." Good for you, Stu. I recently bought a car too. I should say my wife did. She did so much research that at the end of it, and one of my dealers also happens to be in the car business. When I told him what we bought it for, he said, "She did really, really good."
That's great.
I mean, it was, one other thing I want I want to share with our sales reps. How does this impact the organization? And how does this personally impact the buyer? Those questions that Crispin said are so huge. You need to understand how they make buying decisions, and you have to have something. You might be dealing with one buyer, but what happens when that sale is made? If it's a small mom and pop, the buyer, the owner, the salespeople,
That's right.
they're all the same people. But when it's a bigger organization, you got to understand something. Number one, you better make that buyer a hero, and you better let them know you're going to make them a hero. You've got to implement it with your company, and you have to let them know what you have that's different than other sales reps. For me, it's my office, which is Jenny, who's a accountant by trade. Hey, if we have to send Jenny in there and set up everything, we'll do it. It's not a problem. We're going to make this as easy as possible on you. So they want to know, am I going to look good? Am I going to look bad? Yes. Patrick, how are you? Patrick, greetings to Canada. We buy de-risk deals. Yeah. You couldn't say it any better, Patrick.
That's right.
Thank you. We do buy de-risk deals, and de-risk deals are deals that we know where the salesperson has been thorough about the outcomes and the benefits and what it looks like now, how it looks different than if we didn't buy, right?
Yep.
So,
That's
Crispin,
right.
somebody's been watching this and they're going, wow, this guy really knows his stuff. I want some more information. How do they get a hold of you? And I always give my guests the last word, whatever your last word is, and how to get in touch with you, because I got to believe that there are people here that are saying, this guy's special.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete. That's very kind to say. Well, listen, just go to salesarbiter.com. You can do a form fill there, or you can just connect with me on LinkedIn. And I answer them, every message. I pick up my phone, call. It's fine. The number comes right to me. And I'm that guy that picks up the phone, whether I know the number or not, doesn't matter. So I've talked to plenty of companies out there that are trying to sell me, car warranties, because I just pick up the phone. I listen to their pitch, and try to learn even from them. If there's something that I liked that they said, always learning. And I think that's probably what I want to close the show with, Pete, is sharpen, try something different, sharpen your craft, continue to be to learn in this industry and in this position we call sales, and try to do something at least every week where you're taking away something new and even trying something new that maybe that you never tried before. And my goal is always to try something different in hopes of getting some sort of a different outcome. And if it works, then continue to apply that. And when it stops working, try something different, and just keep, kind of working, that little equation is going to help you get better, connecting with your prospect, having higher levels of engagement, and just selling more. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I've learned a lot, and I love talking sales with sales pros that are so gifted like you are. So
so
thank
kind.
you so much.
You're so
Have
kind.
a great day. No,
Thanks a lot.
not kind. You earned it. Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.